Today, I'm going to introduce you to scientific notation. Okay, as I said, I'm going to try to keep this short. There's no guarantees though, but in order to do that, let's start getting into actually the video and what we need. So our objective today, we always need a target to kind of strive for, and our objective today is to be able to convert numbers to and from scientific notation. So with all that being said, let's jump on in what we got. So what is scientific notation? Well, basically it's a way to write really small or really large numbers. It allows scientists to express their measurements a lot easier. Instead of saying 0.000000005 nanometers of something, they can use scientific notation and cut down all those zeros that they have to say. So scientific notation consists of two parts. One, the mantissa, and two, the characteristics. These two parts are separated by what we call a multiplication sign. So we got mantissa multiplied by characteristic. So let's break these components down. What is a mantissa? A mantissa is a positive or negative number between 1 and 10. This includes a decimal place. So the number can be less than 10 and has to be greater than 1. Some of these examples might be 1.0, 5.75, and 9.99. So a mantissa, positive or negative number between 1 and 10. A characteristic is the number 10 raised to the power of another number. Okay, so this looks like the number 10 raised to an exponent. Okay, that exponent, that power, can be either positive or negative, and that positive or negative will tell us which way our decimal place went or is going to go. So some examples of this would be 10 to the 5th power, or 10 to the negative 23rd power. There are three sets of rules that we're going to go over today when it comes to scientific notation. They are very close in how they sound, so pay attention to the words and pay attention to what exactly you're doing for each set of rules. So our first one is convert numbers into scientific notation. So when we convert a number into scientific notation, first we must take that decimal point. If there's not one present, we need to add one. Okay. Then we move it either to the left or the right to create a mantissa, which is a number between 1 and 10, remember? So if I had the number 122.3, I would take the decimal place between the 2 and the 3, and I would move it to the left 2 spots to make the mantissa of 1.223. So we took 122.3 and made it 1.223, a number between 1 and 10. Second step is to add the characteristic. So we have our mantissa, we made our mantissa. Now we got to make our characteristic. First, you're just going to write down multiply sign by 10. No matter what, your characteristic has 10. So multiplied by 10. Now we got to figure out what is our power. What are we going to raise our 10 to make our characteristic? So the amount of places we moved our decimal place is going to give us our exponent. So we have the number 10 raised to our exponent. We moved our decimal place in 122.3. We moved it 2 places to the left. That's going to put a 2 as our exponent. So we have times 10 to the second power. But we're not finished yet. We got to figure out if that second power is positive or negative. This is where the rules get very specific in their wording. So pay attention here. If we moved our decimal place to the left, then our exponent is going to be positive. While if we moved our decimal place to the right, that means our exponent is going to be negative. So we moved our decimal place in 122.3. We moved our decimal place 2 places to the left. It's going to be 10 raised to the positive 2, or positive second. So we have our scientific notation for this number now. 1.223 times 10 raised to the positive second, or positive 2. So that's converting into scientific notation. Now let's talk about converting from scientific notation, so going out of scientific notation. Our first step is going to be check our exponent and our characteristic. So just like our exponent was our last thing in our going to scientific notation, when going from it, first thing we're going to do is check that exponent. So we check that exponent. Okay, that's going to tell us how many places we're going to move our decimal and if we're going to move it to the left or right. So here's where I'm talking about stuff being very specific on their wording. So in our previous example, when we're going to scientific notation, if we move the decimal to the left, then that was going to be a positive exponent. And if we moved it to the right, that's going to be a negative. Well, since we're going from scientific notation, it's going to be flipped. If we move our decimal place to the left now, So if we look at our characteristic and it's 10 raised to the negative something, then we're going to move our decimal place something to the left. Vice versa, if it's 10 raised to the positive something, then we're going to move our decimal place to the right that many places. Let's take our scientific notation of 1.223 times 10 raised to the positive second. Because it is a positive 2, we are going to move our decimal place 2 places to the right, giving us our original number of 122.3. So make sure you pay attention. And are we going to scientific notation? Are we going from it? And then what does left and right mean for this specific rules? Our final set of rules that we're going to talk about is correcting incorrect forms of scientific notation. So sometimes you're going to be given problems that are honestly just incorrect forms of the scientific notation. They're going to give you 23.5 times 10 to the 5th power, something like that. But we see that 23.5 is not in proper mantissa form. So we know that's an incorrect form of scientific notation. In saying that, we got to know how to correct these and get these into proper scientific notation. We see something that's not a proper mantissa. Our first step is to move our decimal place to make a proper mantissa. So if we have the number 235.72 times 10 to the 2nd power, we immediately see 235.72 is not a mantissa. So we got to make that a proper scientific mantissa. We got to move our decimal place to make a number between 1 and 10. In order to do that, we're going to move our decimal place 2 spots to the left. Now we got to either add or subtract from our current characteristic. If we moved our decimal place to the left, then we're going to add to our characteristic. While if we moved our decimal place to the right, we subtract from it. So originally we had 235.72 times 10 to the 2nd power. We moved our decimal place 2 spots to the left. Then we got 2.3572 times 10 to the 2nd. Now we need to add those 2 places we moved our decimal place to our characteristic, giving us a total of 2.3572 times 10 to the 4th power. The biggest thing with these types of questions is understanding what am I looking for, or what am I doing? Am I moving the decimal place to the left to correct incorrect scientific notation? Do I add to my characteristic? Do I make a characteristic more negative, more positive? What's going on here? That's why it's important to understand what rules you're applying here. So make sure you keep an eye out on what you are looking for, what you are given, and where you're going with it. And make sure you use the correct sets of rules for your numbers. That's all I got for this video. If you want to see the rest of this unit, go hit that unit playlist button. It should be appearing sometime around now on the right of the screen. If you're confused on this stuff, you can always rewatch this video. As always, I hope this video helped you out and gave you a better understanding of scientific notation. If you need help by any way, you can always hit me up in Google Classroom. And saying all that, keep up the good work in the class, and see you next time.